this is a video explaining basically how to use a DSLR and to control all the settings on it and the basis of photography. First thing we're going to start with is Aperture. What the Aperture does is essentially adds another dimension to the photo, and to explain it sort of simply, the aperture is a hole within the lens that light travels through. It's kind of like an eyeball. Think of the aperture as in like the iris and how it expands and shrinks depending on the light levels in the room. In photography, a way of describing how big or small an aperture is, you say it in f numbers, also known as f-stops. A smaller f-stop means a larger aperture, and a larger f-stop means a smaller aperture. The size of the aperture has an effect on the depth of field of pictures. I've got a few examples here of when aperture is used differently. At the bottom I've written the aperture sizing and everything else. So it's essentially about what's in focus and what isn't. A large f number such as f/32 would mean that the whole picture is in focus because there's a smaller aperture. On to my next topic, ISO. ISO is the sensitivity of which your camera is to light. The lower the ISO, the least sensitive your camera is to light. Normally you want to stick to a low ISO because in gaining a high ISO you get the downfall of a grainy or a noisy image, and with a lower ISO you'll get higher quality photos, but it would have to be in a scene where it's quite like a normal lighting. Like right now I'm in natural lighting and you could probably use the lowest ISO setting to capture a scene here. However, if you're working in low light conditions, such as if you're just taking pictures off of a bridge, you would need a higher ISO so that your camera would be more sensitive to light, would pick up the light, and you can actually see what you're taking a photograph of. My third point, shutter speed. Shutter speed is, hence the name, is the speed of the shutter whilst taking the picture. Inside of a camera lens there is a metal shutter which is behind like all the mirrors and such. The metal shutter when taking a picture will move and let in a small amount of light and then will come down again, and that is what is called taking a picture. When it moves up, it's exposing light to the sensor, and the shutter speed is how fast it does this and how much light it lets in. If a shutter speed is a fast shutter speed, such as 250th of a second, also written as 1/250, then it can freeze an action shot without blur, which could be something useful if you are taking photography of birds, for instance, or cats that are slightly annoying when they move too much. Slow shutter speeds do have their uses. If you were to be in a low light environment, you could take pictures of light drawing. Light drawing is a huge thing in photography. It's literally, you are drawing with light and it takes a picture whilst doing so. Slow shutter speeds can also capture motion in a picture, and it can make it look quite pretty. It's quite pretty. With these sort of scenarios you need a tripod to stabilise the camera so you don't get any unwanted blur from obviously holding a camera. My fourth point is white balance. White balance is essentially the colour balance and what your camera would see white as. You can change this manually on the camera instead of setting it to auto, depending on the sort of scene that you want to bring out. Kelvin is a way of measuring temperature, and in my opinion is an easier way to shoot if you know what you want the photograph to look like. For example, if you want something quite creepy looking, quite dark, you'd shoot on a lower Kelvin, whereas if you wanted bright, vibrant colours, you'd shoot on a higher Kelvin. I took pictures of what each automated setting on the camera looks like, and you can sort of see the difference in colours between all of them. Then I'm going to bring myself on to my last point, the benefits of using a studio environment in photography. For example, lighting. Lighting is very important and you'll need to know how they work in a studio environment. You obviously have normal light, you can attach a softbox to it so you can get soft lighting, or you could attach a snoot to it so then you would get a direct spotlight. And there's just a lot of things you can do with light colour-wise. You can attach different bulbs in there, you can put covers over it. Backdrops in a studio setup are quite important because you don't want a messy looking background. You don't want something like what I have right now. You don't particularly want in a professional setup. Backdrops can range from white backgrounds, green screens, black backgrounds. Another benefit of a studio environment is the fact that you're not in the way of the public and nothing can interrupt you whilst doing a shoot, and it can be done fast and effectively. In a studio environment, it's very easy to get the shots you want because everything is there for you. You've got a perfect backdrop, perfect lighting, and you've probably got a top-notch camera as well. So this has been me explaining the sort of basics on how to use a DSLR. I hope it's helped somehow. Thank you very much for watching.